On Sunday, March 22, 2020, in Queen's Park, Bolton, Greater Manchester, England, a 30-year-old asylum seeker, Eltiona Scana, crossed paths with a 7-year-old girl.
Yeah. Hands.
Turn over.
Take the bag down.
Where?
Let me take your bag off.
Yes.
Stay still.
Okay.
Hands behind your back.
Thank you.
Have you seen a child anywhere?
That child was Emily Grace Jones. The police were urgently searching for 7-year-old Emily Jones, but before they could find her, restraining this 30-year-old asylum seeker was crucial.
Is she on her own? Right. The child's down there.
Get down there quick.
The ID for Felix.
Yes, it's in my bag. Everything.
What is?
In my bag, ID, everything.
This female is now in cuffs. She has said there's an ID in her backpack, which is by the side of her.
What's in your backpack?
ID and everything.
ID.
Yes, and the knife.
And a knife.
The knife found in Eltiona Scana's bag was used to fatally stab a young girl at Queen's Park.
Right, the time now is 14:45. At this moment in time, you're under arrest on suspicion of attempted murder. You do not have to say anything, but it may be defensive if you do not mention something when questioned that you later rely in court, and if you do so, may be given evidence. Okay? Your arrest is necessary to protect vulnerable people and to ensure a prompt and effective investigation to this offence.
Yeah.
Okay? What's your name?
Eltiona Scana. Eltiona Scana.
Okay. Where do you live?
19 Turnstone Road.
19 Turnstone.
Yes.
Right, just wait there.
This is the story of Emily Jones's murder by a deranged individual. The infamous maniac was unhinged.
Just confirm to me, what's inside your bag?
You can control. It's just no bombs, no nothing.
No
It's just
bombs.
my ID card.
ID card.
In my mom's ID card.
Yeah.
There's a knife, some water, some juice.
Okay.
Nothing.
Okay, that's it. So there's
That's it.
nothing that's going to harm
in
me,
the
no?
bag. No.
Okay.
A sunny afternoon meant for family joy, suddenly shattered by a horrifying act of violence. What started as a simple outing turned into a devastating tragedy, leaving a family and community forever changed. Let's dive into the story of Emily Jones, a little girl whose life was cruelly taken away in the battle for justice that followed. Welcome to the channel. If you're passionate about understanding real-life stories and seeking justice, you've come to the right place. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell to stay updated with our latest content. Share this video to raise awareness and join the fight for justice and better mental health care. Together, we can make a difference. Before we dive into the details of the incident, let's take a moment to understand Eltiona Scana's background and what might have led her to commit such a horrific crime. Eltiona Scana was born in February 1990 in Albania. As fate would have it, her father fell into debt when Eltiona was just 22 years old. In February 2012, Eltiona was forced to marry the man he owed money to. After the marriage, they moved to Kuwait. However, in September the following year, Eltiona managed to flee and return to her homeland. In 2014, she left Albania again, this time heading to Frankfurt, Germany. On August 11th, her sister arranged for her to travel to the United Kingdom. She was smuggled through Italy and France, and on August 13th, she arrived in the UK, hidden in a lorry. She applied for asylum, but her request was initially rejected in June 2018. After an appeal, the decision was overturned, and she was granted a residency permit, allowing her to stay in the country until November 28, 2020. She later received permission to remain until November 2024. In March 2015, Eltiona's mental health began to deteriorate. A doctor assessed her and diagnosed her with post-traumatic stress disorder, PTSD. Before the tragic incident involving Emily, Eltiona had been detained twice in psychiatric hospitals, but managed to escape each time. In July, Eltiona grabbed a knife, convinced she was about to be attacked. Her sister reported the incident, and Eltiona was sectioned and admitted to Royal Bolton Hospital for treatment. She was diagnosed with acute schizophrenia-like psychotic symptoms and believed her neighbors were planning to harm her by tampering with her electricity. After being released from the hospital, Eltiona often ran away, refusing to take her oral medication. As a result, she was given antipsychotic medications through injections. She wasn't happy about this and lodged an appeal against being sectioned. On August 20th, 2018, it was decided that she was well enough to be released since her fears about her neighbors trying to hurt her had lessened. Once released, mental health workers visited her twice a week to check on her. Eltiona frequently complained about the side effects of the injections, saying they made her feel worse. In November 2015, she was taken off the medication, but soon after, her mental health began to decline again. On December 9th, she reported to doctors that she was experiencing auditory hallucinations daily. Despite this, she was discharged, but in February 2017, she was arrested after a disturbing incident involving her mother. In January 2017, Eltiona's mental health took a serious downturn. She refused to let her care coordinator into her home and missed a scheduled meeting. Her sister, deeply worried that Eltiona was relapsing, arranged for a mental health team to visit her on February 13th. Unfortunately, before they could arrive, Eltiona committed a shocking act of violence. When her mother visited, she found Eltiona in a distressed state, attempting to harm herself. Eltiona led her mother upstairs, chained the door shut, and chillingly said that once she killed her, everything would be okay. She then attacked her mother with an iron and her hand. The attack only stopped when a friend intervened. Eltiona was arrested and detained under the Mental Health Act. It later came to light that she had disconnected the boiler, removed all the light bulbs in her home, and gotten rid of her television, further highlighting her deteriorating mental state. An investigative journalist uncovered a series of alarming failures that allowed Eltiona Skana to remain free on the streets, despite her violent history and refusal to take antipsychotic medication. The journalist obtained an internal NHS report revealing multiple blunders and missed opportunities by the Greater Manchester Mental Health NHS Foundation Trust, which was responsible for her care. 3 years before the tragic death of Emily, there was a deeply troubling incident involving Eltiona. She had threatened a 13-year-old girl, possibly armed with a knife, yet this incident was somehow left out of her risk assessment. At one point, Eltiona left the hospital without permission and showed up at her friend's house at 5 a.m., demanding to speak to their 13-year-old daughter. She had taken a knife from a restaurant and was carrying it with her. When her friend's mother refused to let her in and questioned what had happened to her hair, Eltiona chillingly replied that she had cut her hair off to avoid cutting off people's heads. The police returned her to the hospital, and on May 4th, she was bizarrely deemed fit for release. After her return to the hospital, medical staff made a child safeguarding referral, which should have alerted everyone involved in her care that she was a potential risk to children. However, the Trust's serious incident review revealed that while this incident was documented in her notes, the information wasn't easily accessible. Although her history of violence and use of weapons was noted in her risk assessment, the specific danger she posed to children was not highlighted. The report shows that between August and December 2019, Skana was deemed paranoid on 8 separate occasions. Although mental health staff assessed her twice a week after the medication switch, these visits unexpectedly stopped in mid-December. Miss Fagan went on sick leave for about a month, and it seems no one else took responsibility for checking on Skana during that time. Miss Fagan's final visit to Skana was on March 11th, just 11 days before Emily was killed. During this hour-long assessment, Skana talked about her plans to attend college, and Miss Fagan felt that she seemed fine and mentally stable. Skana assured her that she was taking her medication, but this was a lie. When the police arrested her, they discovered that only one tablet was missing from a package of medication, and a stockpile of tablets was found in her flat, indicating she hadn't taken her medication for a month before the killing. Everything seemed quiet until March 2018, when Eltiona expressed that she wasn't feeling well and requested to go back on the injections. She mentioned that she was experiencing hallucinations again. The following year, she asked to be taken off the injections and switched to oral medication instead. Initially, she remained stable, and the support from her family appeared to help with her paranoia. However, she continued to avoid busy places and wore sunglasses to avoid making eye contact. On the morning of March 22, 2020, Eltiona left her home around 1 p.m. and headed to Bolton Town Center. She bought a pack of 3 crafting knives from a pound shop, later telling a psychiatrist that she had purchased them with intention of killing someone. Afterward, she made her way to Queen's Park. A witness later reported seeing a woman sitting on the ground with her legs crossed next to a bench. She seemed agitated, and he noticed a vacant look on her face, which caught his attention. He observed her for about 4 minutes, but since she didn't say or do anything, he eventually decided to head home. This was Mother's Day, and Emily Jones had given her mother a card that morning to celebrate. Around 2:15 p.m., 7-year-old Emily Jones, wearing a navy jacket with red and white spots, was full of energy as she zoomed up and down on her scooter in Queen's Park, Bolton. The weather was gloriously sunny, and Emily's father, Mark, encouraged her to go faster along Promenade Terrace, a wide path that runs along the top of a large grassy slope. As Emily zipped by, Mark scanned the park, looking for Emily's mother, Sarah. Emily Grace Jones was born on January 18, 2013, in Bolton to parents Sarah and Mark. Mark worked as a credit manager while Sarah was a solicitor. People often say wonderful things about their children, but Mark and Sarah genuinely couldn't have asked for a better daughter than Emily. She was an amazing soul, warm, full of life, and endlessly joyful. Emily loved everything, rarely complained, and absolutely adored going to school. She had a great sense of humor and was always making her parents laugh, often playfully scolding them when they were being silly. Emily was a brilliant, vibrant character for such a little girl. Emily had a fearless spirit and a love for the great outdoors, throwing herself into any activity with enthusiasm. Emily was a bit of a daredevil, always up for an adventure, and she was incredibly sociable, making friends wherever she went. Both Sarah and Mark made sure that Emily's short life was filled with exciting experiences. Sarah took her horse riding, swimming, and indoor climbing, while Mark introduced her to skiing on an indoor slope in Manchester and bodyboarding in Wales. Sarah had taken Emily on holidays to Portugal and Spain, and Mark was planning to take her on a trip to France. Emily's teachers described her as creative and passionate about drawing and writing stories. She was very popular in her class, getting along with everyone, and was known for her bright, hardworking nature. Emily often joked with her teachers that she had finished her work before her classmates had even written the date. Although Mark and Sarah were no longer together, they maintained a good relationship and were committed to co-parenting Emily. She was the center of their world, and they both worked hard to give her the best life possible. Sarah cared for Emily 4 days a week, while Mark took care of her the rest of the time, including Sundays. Mark had immense admiration for Sarah, recognizing what a fantastic job she did in raising Emily to be a polite and well-behaved little girl. Sarah always dressed Emily beautifully and was a brilliant mother in every way. Mark usually spent Sundays with Emily, and on Sunday, March 22, 2020, he and Sarah had arranged to meet in Queen's Park. It was Mother's Day, and Emily had given her mom a card earlier that morning, a sweet gesture that would linger in memory as the day unfolded. It was also the day before Britain would enter its first coronavirus lockdown, a moment when the world was about to change in ways no one could have imagined. That afternoon, Sarah was planning to go for a run in the park, and Mark and Emily were looking forward to watching her jog before treating themselves to ice cream. Mark fondly recalled the moment, saying, "I can remember saying to Emily, 'Go on, you can do your fastest lap,' because I used to time her from one end to another. Then I said, 'Right, we're going to see Mummy, and once we've seen Mummy, we'll go for an ice cream.' And she was like, 'Yes, brilliant,' and that was it." But what happened next turned that quiet Victorian park into a scene of almost unimaginable horror. As they made their way through the park, Emily spotted Sarah running along the bottom of the hill. Excitedly, she said, "Daddy, Daddy, I want to go to Mom." Mark, who was 200 yards away, encouraged her, saying, "Of course," and off she went, speeding down the path. As Emily rushed towards her mother, calling out, "Mummy, Mummy, Mummy," to get her attention, a lone woman sitting on a bench suddenly jumped up. The woman grabbed Emily, put her in a headlock. Sarah, wearing headphones, was unaware of the terrible scene unfolding just yards away as she continued her run, oblivious to her daughter's cries. Mark initially thought Emily had simply fallen off her scooter. He could hear her crying and assumed the figure holding her was helping her up. But then a woman nearby screamed, "She's been stabbed." Mark sprinted towards his gravely injured daughter, but by the time he reached her, the psychotic attacker had already thrown Emily to the ground and fled. Mark cradled his daughter, shouting desperately for help. Mark was terrified. The situation was dire, and he knew it. He thought he was going to lose her. He was shouting, "Just stay with me, Emily, stay with me. Don't leave me." She was just trying to breathe. It was horrific. Mark wouldn't wish anybody to see that happen to their own daughter. He struggled to keep himself together as he held Emily in his arms. Her injury was catastrophic, and she was gasping for air. Mark's heart shattered as he tried to comfort her, knowing deep down how bad things were. But it was, and the memory of that moment would haunt him forever. In the midst of the chaos, Mark frantically dialed Sarah's number. She was still running, completely unaware of the nightmare that had just unfolded. I called and said, come back, we've just seen you. Emily's been stabbed. By the time Sarah turned around, a passerby had already handed Mark a t-shirt to try and stem the bleeding, while a nurse who happened to be in the park rushed over to take over first aid. The nurse quickly knelt beside Emily, trying desperately to help her, but Emily was deteriorating rapidly, her life slipping away with each passing second. One of the park goers that day was Tony Canty, who was there with his wife and baby daughter. When he saw the woman who had attacked Emily trying to flee the scene, he didn't hesitate. Though he wasn't exactly sure what had happened or if she was armed, he ran after her anyway. His wife, meanwhile, handed Mark their baby's muslin cloth to help stop Emily's heavy bleeding. The emergency services arrived within minutes. Paramedics worked quickly to try and save Emily. They immediately began administering CPR and gave her adrenaline before quickly loading her into the air ambulance. As Tony chased the fleeing woman, his wife shouted after him, warning that the woman had a knife. Despite this, Tony bravely continued. He eventually caught up with the woman, knocked her to the ground, and sat on her to prevent her from running away. While holding her down, he called 999, telling the operator there's been an incident at Queen's Park in Bolton and a child's bleeding. He also tried to communicate with the woman, who was clearly agitated and incoherent. The woman was rambling, saying things that made little sense. She claimed she no longer needed injections, that Tony had killed her family, and that he was killing her. Tony tried to calm her down, telling her, "You're not well, the police will help you," but she snapped back, "I don't need you to tell me to be calm." Despite her erratic behavior, Tony stayed with her, keeping her subdued until the police arrived and took over. Mark later reflected on Tony's bravery, saying, "He was amazing to chase after her. I will thank him in due course."
Yeah. Hands.
Turn over.
Take the bag down.
Where?
Let me take your bag off.
Yes.
Stay still.
Okay.
Hands behind your back.
Thank you.
Have you seen a child anywhere? Is she on her own? Right. The child's down there.
Get down there quick.
The ID for Philo.
Yes, it's in my bag. Everything.
What is?
In my bag, ID, everything.
18016. Go ahead.
This female is now in cuffs. She has said there's a white ID in her backpack, which is by the side of her hand.
What's in your backpack?
ID and everything.
ID.
Yes, and the knife.
And a knife.
And a knife. 15. That's a kilo.
Right, the time now is 14:45. At this moment in time, you're under arrest on suspicion of attempted murder. You do not have to say anything, but it may be defensive. You do not mention something when questioned that you later rely in court, and if you do so, may be given evidence. Okay? Your arrest is necessary to protect vulnerable people and to ensure a prompt and effective investigation to this offence.
Yeah.
Okay? What's your name?
El Jonas Corner. El Jonas Corner.
Okay. Where do you live?
19 Turnstone Road.
19 Turnstone.
Yes.
Just confirm to me, what's inside your bag?
You can control. It's just no bombs, no nothing.
No
It's just
bombs.
my ID card.
ID card.
In my mom's ID card.
Yeah.
There's a knife, some water, some juice.
Okay.
Nothing.
Okay, that's it. So there's
That's
nothing that's going to harm
in
me,
the
no?
bag. No.
Okay.
The area where Emily was attacked was quickly cordoned off as detectives began piecing together the events of that tragic day. Meanwhile, Emily was airlifted to Salford Royal Hospital. Despite the best efforts of the medical team, who ventilated her and performed blood transfusions, Emily remained in cardiac arrest. Tragically, she passed away just half an hour after her arrival at 3:56 p.m. Emily's time of death was officially recorded, marking the beginning of a murder inquiry. Mark was left with the unimaginable horror of calling Sarah to tell her that their little girl was gone. The sound of Sarah's anguished cries over the phone would forever be etched in his memory. Later that night, Sarah had to make another heart-wrenching call to her parents. The family gathered at Sarah's house, engulfed in grief. The first night without Emily was unbearable. How they survived it, they couldn't even begin to comprehend. Emily's death left a gaping hole in the lives of her parents. The joy, laughter, and energy that Emily brought into their lives had vanished, replaced by a profound emptiness. Mark and Sarah, who once reveled in the vibrant life of raising their daughter, now found themselves surrounded by a stark and serious reality. The light-hearted interactions with children that used to fill their days were now a distant memory, making the absence of Emily even more difficult to bear. Mark's friends, unsure how to approach him, struggled with the fear that their own children might bring up painful memories. But Mark, understanding their hesitation, reassured them that seeing their children would not deepen his grief. He still loved being around kids and interacting with them, just as he had with Emily. He told his friends that while Emily was no longer there, their children wouldn't make him sad. He wanted them to know that his bond with children hadn't been shattered, even though his heart had. The following day, Sarah faced the unbearable task of formally identifying Emily's body. A post-mortem confirmed the devastating truth. Emily had died from a severe wound to her neck. As the investigation unfolded, the police began to piece together the profile of Eltiona Skana, the 13-year-old woman they had arrested. She was immediately detained under the Mental Health Act. When Eltiona was arrested, noted that she was cooperative and calm. When questioned about her mental state, Skana simply said, "Not very well." She claimed she couldn't remember the incident. It soon emerged that Eltiona was already known to mental health professionals. She had a history that should have raised red flags, especially concerning her interactions with children. Medical staff was aware that she was a threat, yet the systems in place had failed to prevent the tragedy. When Eltiona was arrested, officers found something peculiar, wire tied around her toes. When asked about it, Skana explained that it was to help her with her emotions. Before the wire was removed, she attempted to tighten it, a behavior that a doctor later described as indicative of a psychotic state. On that fateful day, as Emily excitedly headed toward her mother, she passed by the bench where Eltiona sat. In a sudden, brutal act, Eltiona stood up, grabbed Emily into a headlock, and launched a vicious attack, ending Emily's life in a senseless, violent act. A search of Eltiona's flat revealed a significant and troubling detail: nearly a month's worth of antipsychotic medication that had not been taken. Police found just one tablet missing from a package of medication. A doctor later explained that abruptly stopping such medication could lead to a rapid decline in mental health within just a few days, which could have contributed to Eltiona's unstable state at the time of the attack. The revelation that Eltiona was not taking her medication was not entirely surprising to those familiar with her case. Her sister had informed mental health staff that she had a history of not adhering to her prescribed medication. Despite this knowledge, Eltiona was still under the care of the Bolton North Community Mental Health Team, which was severely overstretched with just 2 consultant psychiatrists overseeing 855 patients. Eltiona was classified under a traffic light system used to manage patient risk, and at the time of the incident, she had been categorized as green, indicating that she was considered stable. This tragic misjudgment and failure to recognize the clear warning signs in Eltiona's behavior ultimately led to the devastating loss of Emily, a young life cut short by a system that was supposed to protect her. Eltiona Skana faced serious charges: murder and possession of a bladed item. She was kept in custody and was set to appear at Manchester and Salford Magistrates Court on Tuesday, May 26th. Mark attended the hearing, while Eltiona appeared via video link from Rampton Secure Hospital, a high-security psychiatric facility. She pleaded guilty to manslaughter on the grounds of diminished responsibility. The prosecutors were given a week to consider her plea, but they decided to move forward with a murder trial. It was now up to the jury to decide if this was a case of manslaughter or if Eltiona was using her mental health as a convenient excuse for her actions. In court, evidence from her time in the hospital was presented. The testimony revealed that Eltiona had discussed her actions with a nurse, suggesting that the killing had been planned rather than a spontaneous act. One doctor described her as a very high risk for serious, potentially fatal harm to others. The court also heard that while in the hospital, Eltiona watched a children's TV program and laughed hysterically when a child who resembled Emily appeared on screen. She told a nurse, "It's been 3 months. What do you want me to do? Cry all the time?" She later admitted to the same nurse, "It was premeditated. I waited in a park and picked my victim. I did what I did, then tried to run away." During these conversations, she wasn't on her medication. Evidence from a forensic psychiatrist from Eltiona's hospital indicated that a conviction for murder was not realistic. After reviewing the medical evidence, the prosecution agreed that it would not be fair to ask the jury to convict her of murder. Consequently, the murder charge was withdrawn and the jury was instructed to return a not guilty verdict on that charge. Eltiona Skana was ultimately convicted of manslaughter on the grounds of diminished responsibility. After the initial sentencing, it was reported that Skana's minimum term was increased from 8 years to 10 years and 8 months. The judge admitted that the original sentence had been calculated in error and took full responsibility for the mistake. Following the inquest, Emily's father, Mark, expressed his deep disappointment with the findings. Mark felt that the authorities had underestimated the threat posed by Eltiona Skana. Mark also admitted he had not forgiven Eltiona for her actions. "I know people say it's good for your mental health to forgive, but in this instance, I can't. How dare she touch my daughter? How dare she put her hands on her? No, I can't forgive her." Eltiona Skana later appealed her sentence, but the appeal was rejected. As of now, Skana remains at Rampton Hospital where she continues to receive treatment. In the wake of Emily's tragic death, her school decided to create a lasting tribute in her honor. Over £11,000 was raised to establish a memorial garden, reflecting Emily's love for the outdoors and serving as a peaceful space for friends and family to remember her. Mark joined forces with the charity 100 Families, which supports those affected by violence committed by individuals with mental illness. Sarah launched a GoFundMe campaign in Emily's memory to support Bolton Lads and Girls Club. The initiative aimed to help children access various opportunities and support, raising nearly £30,000. For Emily's grieving family, life will never be the same. Certain aspects of the tragedy remain too painful for Mark to fully confront. He often takes a detour to avoid Queen's Park and struggles with the haunting memories of that day. Despite the immense pain, Mark finds strength in the support of friends and family, drawing inspiration from Emily's memory. He is committed to seeking justice for her and ensuring that something positive emerges from this tragedy. His determination to prevent such a horror from happening again is what keeps him going. While no amount of justice can bring Emily back, her legacy pushes us to reflect on the gaps in our systems and the urgent need for compassionate care. Thank you for joining us in this deeply emotional journey. If this story has touched you, make sure to subscribe to our channel. Leave a comment to share your thoughts and support, and don't forget to like this video to help spread awareness. Together, we can keep the conversation going and advocate for the change we wish to see. See you in the next video, and remember, every story matters.